Hello friends, today we will be discussing on one of the most important topic of our syllabus, that is separation of politics from ethics and religion, or simply Machiavelli's view on ethics and morality, or ethics and politics, or religion and state. Let's go back quickly to the background once again. Machiavelli was born in Florence when Italy was politically divided into many small states, but economically quite prosperous or remarkable because it was during the Renaissance period. Some of the city-states like Venice and Genoa were the trade pioneers, followed by other states. Even tradable bonds, as commonly used type of security, were invented by these Italian city-states. At a very young age, Machiavelli became a pupil of a renowned Latin teacher, Paolo da Consiglione. Later on, he attended the University of Florence and received an excellent humanist education. Machiavelli entered into public view with his appointment in 1498 as the second chancellor of the Republic of Florence. Florence had been under a republican government since 1494 after the Medici family, who ruled the state when Machiavelli was born, were driven out of power along with their supporters. For about 14 years, Machiavelli was engaged in various diplomatic activities, traveling to many cities of Italy as well as to its neighboring states. Machiavelli thrived under the patronage of the Florentine Gonfalonier Pieri Soderini. In other words, he thrived under the patronage of the Florentine head of government. In 1512, with the assistance of papal troops, the Medici defeated the Republic's armed forces and dissolved the republican government. The assistance of papal troops was one reason why later on Machiavelli had the Roman Catholic Church so much. Suspected of conspiring against the Medici in 1513, he was imprisoned and tortured for several weeks. However, he was released and retired to his farm near Florence, where he focused on his literary pursuits and wrote many books, including literary books. When the Florentine Republic was re-established in 1527, Machiavelli was an object of great suspicion and died later that year, not only by the Medici family, but even the Florentine Republic, when it came back to power in 1527, did no longer trust Machiavelli, because during those days he wrote books to find favor from the Medici family. Now, on separation of politics from ethics and religion. Now, let us first try to understand the situation of the church and how Machiavelli looked at it. Machiavelli, in short, didn't have a cordial relationship with the Catholic Church. The strike of bad press began when the church associated his base nun-book, The Prince, with the malevolent mission of Satan. Meaning to say, The Prince, the most important book of Machiavelli, was considered by the church as an attempt by Satan to mislead the people for evil purpose. Machiavelli has been castigated as a man inspired by the devil, as an immoral writer, an anti-Christian, an evil ideologue, and an advocate of tyranny. He was denounced as an apostle of the devil, but also was read and applied systematically by authors and politicians, enunciating the doctrine of reason of state. Many people despise his writings, but at the same time, many people also read his books more sympathetically for his theory on the reason of state. The main source of this book concerned Machiavelli's attitude towards conventional moral and religious standards of human conduct, mainly in connection with his most important book, The Prince. For many of his readers, his teachings endorses immoralism, or at least amoralism. The most extreme versions of this group call him as teacher of evil. But there are also moderate group among his readers who view Machiavelli as simply a realist or a pragmatist, advocating the suspension of commonplace ethics in matters of politics. To Machiavelli, the head of state ought to do good if he can, but must be prepared to commit evil if he must, in order to achieve the end of the state. Machiavelli was no friend of the institutionalized Christian church as he knew it. He makes clear that conventional Christianity weakened the vigor in human beings required for active civil life. Many scholars believe that Machiavelli was profoundly anti-Christian, preferring the pagan civil religions of ancient societies to be more suitable for a city endowed with virtue than Christianity. But Machiavelli viewed religion as man-made, whose value lies in its contribution to social order and the rules of morality necessary the defensive security required it, meaning to say, Machiavelli was anti-Christianity or anti-clergy people, but he considered religion as important creation of human being in order to maintain social order and the rules of morality. Machiavelli feared that having a religion is essential to keep a republic in order. It is good and beneficial only if it produces peace and order so as to bring fortune and success in the state. It is clear that Italy needed a religion similar to that ancient Rome had, a religion that taught to serve the interests of the state to maintain its political and military virtues, which Christian faith did not impart. Machiavelli was anti-church and anti-clergy, but not anti-religion per se. He considered religion as necessary, not only for man's social life, but also for the health and prosperity of the state. It is important within a state because of the influence it will our political life in general, but though religion is an indispensable part of civic life, it was never an end in itself. Rather, religion is important, but it is simply a means to an end. Machiavelli's attitude towards religion is strictly utilitarian, meaning to say, religion is important only as long as it serves a particular purpose. To him, religion is a social force and does not have any spiritual connotation. He is not interested in the spiritual world, he is not interested in the life after war, rather he is interested only in this practical present world. Religion is a mere instrument of political domination and unity. It is a political tool princes and rulers are to use in their power struggles effectively, responsibly and cautiously, since it could be disastrous. Religion determines the social and ethical norms and values that govern human conduct and actions. He contended that original Christianity taught virtues that link internal good of the soul with the generation and training of civic virtue. Machiavelli is seriously concerned with the display of high moral standards and qualities by its citizens in public life. He blamed the church and priests of Rome for making the Italian people become not only irreligious and bad, but also keeps the country divided. To him, Christianity as a sect creates men weak and inactive, and deliver politics into the hands of cruel and wicked men without a fight. Although he is a harsh critic of the church leadership and practices, he did not condemn Christian morality, nor did he try to redefine the Christian conception of a good person. He simply dismissed the Christian view that an individual was endowed with a divine element and a supernatural end. Machiavelli also retained the basic Christian views on the differences between good and evil. He did not deny that good and evil as defined by Christian faith is wrong. He accepted he is probably a Christian about everything important except politics. Machiavelli is also credited for formulating the modern concept of state for the first time, which later on became more organized in a few centuries after his time. He rises to the mantle of the founder of modern political science. In other words, sometimes he is also known as father of modern political theory. His name and doctrines were widely invoked to justify the priority of the interests of the state in the age of absolutism and even today. Machiavelli distinguished between pagan and Christian morality and chose paganism for the latter. That means pagan morality focused on public life, social existence, and institutional requirements, and Christian morality was inward-looking, individualistic, and concerned with the need to tend one's soul. Politics to him is an essential human activity in building societies and communities based on rules, laws, and a balance of conflicting interests. But politicians, almost in all parts of the world, are often seen as selfish and corrupt who pursue their own vested interests instead of the common good of the populace. This highlights the role of ethics in politics because trust in and respect for politics and politicians is vital for living together in communities and societies, especially in democracies. Politics requires a high level of responsibility and commitment from citizens, political parties, parliamentarians, government executives, the judiciary, the media, businesses, non-governmental organizations, and religious and educational institutions. In short, to make politics success, everyone, both individual and organizations in the state, is required. The point of Machiavelli-An science is not to distinguish between just and unjust forms of government, but to explain how politicians deploy power for their own gain. Much later on, Rousseau, however, held that the real lesson of the prince is to teach the people the truth about how princes behave and thus to expose, rather than celebrate, the immorality at the core of one-man rule. The novelty or the interesting thing in Machiavelli's writings was his attitude towards religion and morality, which distinguished him from all those who preceded him. Machiavelli daringly advanced a separation of politics and ethics that remains controversial even today, arguing that actions are never right or wrong in any fixed, defined sense, but instead must be judged within the context of their final outcomes. Machiavelli not only separated morality from politics but also relegated religion to a very subordinate position in his political system. And it is because of this that the modern study of politics is assumed to have begun with Machiavelli. Machiavelli's approach is a very pragmatic one. He wants to lay out what the prince needs to do to succeed. According to Machiavelli, everything must be subordinated to the political good, which is order, greatness, or safeguard of the state. For him, political success is either to create or to maintain a solid, stable, and prosperous state, a state that can satisfy man's interests and desires, a state that man would like to be part of, and a state that brings glory and pride to its citizens. When the safety of one's own country wholly depends on the decision to be taken, no attention should be paid to either justice or injustice, to kindness or cruelty, or to its being praiseworthy or ignominious. Successful rulers must sin with impunity for the greater good of the state, and politics must cease to be cast as a byproduct of theology. A state can be a republic or principality with solid laws, where citizens obey either by law or by arms, and the prince is willing to do whatever it takes to maintain and keep order. In the Discourses, one of his books, he looked back to the period of the Roman Republic as an age in which citizens act heroically and decisively in defense of their freedoms and territorial integrity. Machiavelli recognizes that there are virtues and vices, there are goods and evils, that what people call good is good and what people call bad is bad, even for the prince. However, if the prince is called cruel but keeps his subjects united, it is better than being called merciful that yields murders and evils. Meaning to say, for a ruler, it is better to be cruel and maintain the subjects united than to be merciful but lead to chaos and murders. The prince must have all the authority for himself without having to give an account to anyone, nor his people, nor God, nor his conscience. Nothing should be superior from the authority of the prince or the ruler. Even God should not be considered authority over the ruler. Moral norms are established as prescriptions to be followed by individuals in order to do good and avoid evil, but deny such moral norms for those who are in power. Meaning to say, people who are in power doesn't care what type of morality they have to follow. The only moral available for the ruler or people who are in power is those moral values that maintain the security and integrity or the unity of the state. Machiavelli suggests for divorcing politics from ethics, as his politics is an attempt to derive a set of political axioms from a set of assumptions about human beings which will always work. When we say that Machiavelli separates politics from ethics, it simply means politics is different from ethics. They are not the same. The center of ethics is truth and right. You always consider in ethics what is right and what is truth. Whereas in politics, the aim is always interest and benefits, which is associated with the unity and security of the state. The crucial or important goal will never be realized by focusing on how saints and philosophers of the past have insisted people should act, but rather through the exercise of virtue or courage, craft, steadfastness, and valor. These virtues, which Machiavelli core, are important in order to realize the purpose of the state. Christian morality, with its emphasis on self-denial, lowliness, turning the other cheek, and contempt for this world, was for Machiavelli the antithesis of virtue, and therefore little to civic order. Many of the Christian morality, according to Machiavelli, are dangerous to maintain law and order or security in the state. Abiding ethics in politics is not only disadvantageous but also leads to total loss for the state. Ethics expect us to tell the truth even if it is against us, not to do justice, not to take people as our instrument, not to lie, to abstain from deception, not to conceal the truth, etc. But politics require the abandonment of some of these principles of ethics, for any political activity is impossible without a dirty hands. Ethics is essential for the individual and dispensable for the continuity of society and social life. But affection is dangerous for the prince, and he alerts or he warns the prince or monarch against the danger of pity. Anyone who wants in all conditions to be virtuous in the midst of all this wickedness has no destiny except disappointment. The ruler may support and spread religious doctrines and belief in miracles as far as they keep the people well conducted and united. Beyond this, religious institutions and norms do not have any practical role to play for the success of the ruler in his political life. It makes no difference whether the prince spreads amongst the people true or false religious belief and ideas as long as it serves its purpose. To support his position, Machiavelli made the Catholic Church of Italy responsible for the disintegration of his country. The discourses makes clear that conventional Christianity took from human beings the vigor required for active civil life. Machiavelli was categorical that public spirit was crucial to the stability of the state. One of the key determinants of public spirit was religion, and the other liberty. Religion and liberty are two important things to make public spirit high. So he advised the prince to do anything and everything possible to cultivate belief in religion, even if the ruler in his personal capacity was irreligious or had very little faith in religion. A truly great prince can never be conventionally religious himself, but he should create his people religious if he can. He describes prophets like Moses, Romulus, Cyrus the Great, and Theseus as the greatest of new princes, the glorious and brutal founders of the mainly novel innovations in politics, who used strong armed forces to even murder their own people. He hinted that the fear of God among religious citizens can be replaced through fear of the prince, if there is a prince strong enough. Now, to conclude, for Machiavelli, politics is nothing but a ground for the procurement, preservation, and expansion of power, which cannot be realized without sacrificing the principle of ethics. What is consistent in his important works, particularly the Prince and Discourses, is the privileging of hard-nosed command and the conviction that private and public morality must not be conflated. In other words, private morality, which is for the individual, and public morality, which is for the people in power or simply the state, must not be considered as one. Rather, they are two different things. In short, Machiavelli's views on separation of politics from ethics and religion, or simply religion and state, or ethics and morality, is considered to be his greatest contribution to modern political theory. Thank you so much, and see you again in the next lecture.